Hey folks, walk with me. A question came in. How can you find validation in yourself if you haven't accomplished anything? The writer then goes on to talk about how he's, I think, in his early 30s, hasn't, I don't know, done anything that he considers to be enough or significant in his life, and wonders then how he can essentially have any sense of self-worth or just validation in his own existence without having accomplished anything. There's a bunch of stuff that stands out in this. One thing would be, what's the necessity of accomplishing something in order to validate yourself? Why do those two things have to be linked together? Why can't you validate yourself absent of anything other than that you are yourself? And then if you accomplish things, that's something that your already validated self did, and that those two things can stand separately. Because, the other end of that is, if your validated self, go out and try a bunch of things and, I guess, in your mind, fail at those things, then still you have your most important thing, which is your validated self. So you're sort of skipping, you're trying to link things together in a way that seems logical and probably seems necessary in modern society, but you're actually setting yourself up for just either confirmation that you're invalid, or confirmation that you can't accomplish anything, and therefore it says X, Y, and Z about you. And it seems to me like there's something there that you want to invalidate. So finding validation just for being you, with all of your fallacies and foibles and ways in which you just don't, act the way that others want you to act, or you don't achieve the things that maybe you wish you could achieve. That's all part of what makes you you. And it's not just the great stuff and this is why I sort of dislike the idea of go out there and be your best self, because to me it entertains this concept that there is like a version of you that just does all of the right things, checks all of the right boxes, is a good boy or a good girl, and stays in line. And then you can say, hey, I was my best self today. To me, your best self is just your authentic being. And that is going to come with your pitfalls. It's going to come with your failures. It's going to come with things that you say that you maybe don't say correctly, right? You don't say quite right, or that you wish that you didn't say at all. It's going to be, and it doesn't mean that you can't try to make adjustments and sort of weed those things out of your life if you want, but to attach this concept of I'm not being my best self to it, right? And then just giving yourself another reason, another way in which to beat yourself up, I think is not productive in the context of trying to curtail the things that you tend to do that you maybe don't like. That doesn't have to equal I'm not being my best self. I have to fix myself. It's not fixing yourself. You're still going to have all of these things that you feel are not quite right. That will just go on forever. So that's the other part of the issue, I guess we could say, with this line of thought. If you need to accomplish something in order to validate, where that gets you is, in the best case scenario, you do something and you're now a millionaire, and now you feel invalidated because you're not a billionaire, or you feel invalidated because the way in which you made your millions wasn't the right way to do it, or wasn't the most effective way, or it took you too long to do it. Or now you're invalidated because you don't have a family, or you know what I mean? Like, I could just sit here and list things, but you can also, right? It's just going to make the video longer in ways that it doesn't need to be longer. But just find whatever list of things that people feel are important to them, which are different to everyone, and also shift over time. The things that are important to you today very well may not be important to you in a year, much less 10 or 20 years. Those things just change over time. And so this concept of not validating yourself first, and then with that validated self, moving through life and just accumulating or, separating yourself from, rejecting, distancing yourself from things that you're leaving behind, things that you don't want. That is the validated self going through. But to think that there's some connection between validation as a starting point and accomplishment, I think you have cart before horse in a pretty then sort of mentally challenging way, like a way that is going to really just cause you to constantly beat yourself up, constantly feel like you're falling short. And in some ways, you fit in really nicely to the super capitalized and alpha male, status quo of modern U.S. society, where you have to constantly be striving for the next thing. And if you're not striving for the next thing, if you're not, becoming that better version of yourself, then you are really just wasting your time, and so on and so forth. And that is a bill of goods that is sold to you in a way that is very much like sold to you in the truest of senses. You're buying into an entire lifestyle and then getting sucked into a whole life cycle that is not your own. You're being sold something. You're being marketed to. You're being given this concept of the American dream and alpha males and, people who are quote unquote successful versus unsuccessful, deserving versus undeserving. This is why we have such I don't even want to say a hard time, because that lets us off the hook too easily. But that's why we have such an egregious stance and capability, or want, I guess is better, to take care of people in society who are struggling. Like, we are atrocious at that. And a big part of the reason is because there is this push for, well, you have to validate your existence by producing something, by providing some value. But I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but don't do them to validate yourself. Because then we end up in a position where, we are one of the richest countries in the world and cannot or aren't willing to. It's not cannot. We are unwilling to help our struggling neighbors, fellow citizens, people who we should be caring about, because we think that they do X, Y, and Z. They're too lazy. They're addicted to something. They have bad habits. Whatever it is, we use those things to invalidate them, right? So the sense of validation based on those things just leads to invalidation based on those same things. And you end up in a really sick situation, which we are in. And I think you're probably getting swept up in that, or at least that's highly contributive to maybe a state of mind that was already, I don't know, very present to you for some other reason. Household, community, family history, whatever. But that's my soapbox plus 2 cents. All right, folks. Well, this will be coming out after the new year, so I hope that your new year is off to a good start. And if you walked with me or watched this far, I really, really appreciate it. And as always, I will see you in the next video.